Get some booze.
Okay, seriously. But seriously.
Hey, James, welcome.
Hey. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, bud. Nothing but mess.
Nice.
All right.
This is Seager Storytime episode 2, and we're here at Rome Free Ranch in beautiful Hot Springs, Montana.
I'm Elliott, this is Case, and that's Mattson, and we're here interviewing James Barkman.
James, do you mind introducing yourself to our beautiful guests?
What up, what up? Hi, Mom. Yeah, my name is James Barkman, like they said. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I live in San Luis Obispo at the moment, and I'm here with the Seager crew. Psyched to be here for Storytime round 2.
Nice.
Hell yeah, stoked to have you here, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for
That's
having me,
great.
boys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
How old are you?
26.
That's how old we are.
Exactly.
Mid to late 20s.
Damn.
I don't want that one to come out.
We're still in there.
So you currently live where? Like, as in, like, what apparatus of, like, vehicle do you live in?
Well, so currently I'm kind of splitting my time between a sailboat in Morro Bay, which is in like San Luis Obispo County on the central coast of California. And I've lived in a 1976 VW van for the last like 5-6 years now. I guess I kind of lost track of the time. But at the moment, I live on a sailboat when I'm in San Luis Obispo, and when I'm traveling, I kind of live in my van. So I've kind of been in alternative, like unconventional, or lived in unconventional places, if you will, for the last 6 years.
Just feels natural to live that way, or?
I guess,
the
man. I
mentality?
mean, like, when I first moved into my bus, I was living in an apartment at the time. And I got my bus, I was kind of into Volkswagens, and when I got it, I was just camping in it most nights out of the week, and it
Okay.
kind of naturally evolved into this thing where I'm like, well, if I'm living in my bus or my van most of the time, why don't I just move into it? And why am I paying for this apartment that I'm never in?
Totally.
So it kind of just happened naturally a while back, and I guess I've never looked back.
Was that in Pennsylvania?
It was in Pennsylvania.
Okay,
yeah.
and then you drove all the way out here?
Drove all the way out to the West Coast about 6 years ago for a work opportunity with a photographer in California, and I've kind of been doing my own like freelance photo thing. I'm a photographer by trade.
Okay. Yeah, I feel that.
So
it's, no, you got it.
What would you say your skill set is? Is it photographer, climber, mountaineer?
Sure. I mean, that's always kind of an interesting question because I feel like now we live in such an age of opportunity where you don't have to be one thing. You can kind of be all these different things. So there's opportunity for it, which is crazy and awesome. And I would definitely, first and foremost, be a photographer. That's how I make money. That's kind of how I make a living. But also, I would consider myself a climber or mountaineer more specifically.
I feel that.
Yeah.
So when you get hired for digs from various companies, whatever it is it brought up ahead of time where they say it's like a mountaineering shoot, for example? Are they kind of hiring you for that as well to kind of help assist on that? Or you just have to know how to mountaineer to get the shots? Is that kind of part of it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like there's not really any formula. I mean, at times I feel like I'll be brought on to assist on a project because like in the mountains or something, because I have the skill set to be able to do that. And then at times I feel like I'll be supported to do a climb or an expedition, and kind of, get sponsored, if you will, to do that. So
Okay.
the line definitely gets a little blurry, but I think, again, we're living in such a time where there's like opportunity to kind of do just more than one thing. It's like you can make it, and you don't have to just be this like one specific thing. There's freedom to do more than that and to kind of pioneer into these different areas.
What do your roots in Pennsylvania look like? Because from what I know of you and us going on trips together, you're an outdoorsman to me, and I see you hunt or throw an axe or your bow and arrow. So what are your roots in Pennsylvania? What does that look like?
So I was born and raised in Pennsylvania in a zone called Lancaster, which is
That sounds Amish.
is pretty Amish. You assume correct.
Oh, I had a feeling.
And it's definitely like a rural area. And when I was growing up there, you're kind of like bummed on it because that's all you know. It feels pretty small. Like you're not really connected with like the world and what's happening in it, I guess. But it feels pretty small. And now that I've gotten older, I've appreciated it so much more. But basically, my upbringing looked like just a lot of time outside. Some of my earliest memories with my dad are growing up like hunting with him. Before I could legally hunt or carry a gun, I would go with him and just like sit in the cold and be so psyched to hunt and be with my dad and be in the woods.
So sick.
And yeah, I mean, it's definitely like growing. For those of you that have grown up in rural areas, it's just a whole different experience. I mean, it's like I grew up with horses on a small farm, and actually for a while, my dad had this ostrich farm, like ostrich operation, which was super random.
One ostrich or multiple ostriches?
So many ostriches.
How many are we talking? Like,
How many ostriches?
give
Dude,
me
I don't
like
even know.
50?
No, I feel like
get
I mean
lots
they came and went, just getting blasted. They came and went, but in the 90s, the ostrich industry just like fully blew up.
The ostrich industry for eggs or meat or
It
riding
was like the meat.
Ostrich farm.
them? I mean, I think of it as like a petting zoo. What do you do with them?
Definitely not a petting zoo, dude.
So-
Those things are like dinosaurs. They're
Pretty
so
gnarly.
gnarly with their crazy
Yeah.
talons. But it was like the meat. It was the leather. It was the eggs. Kind of those
Whoa.
things. Like
Yeah,
the meat's
boots.
the meat still is a delicacy.
Do
if you go
people
to some,
die from ostriches?
For sure, they get like kicked and
Really?
Kicked in
gored
the-
by them.
Oh,
Yeah, the males were
God.
always so.
it's so
Did
gnarly.
you ever ride one?
Dude, no. Okay, so if I grew
Oh.
up now, like if I had ostriches right now, I'd for sure ride them, or I'd like make my kids ride them or something. But at the time, it's like that's all you know. It's not like weird to
Yeah.
or out of the ordinary to grow up on an ostrich little farm
Yeah,
because
totally
that's
normal.
all you know.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
out of the ordinary?
Super
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, I can't believe I didn't ride them.
Yeah.
Like, train them.
Straight up.
Train them.
But
Little
they
minions.
were super scary.
They have
like,
little
I'd
bits. Like,
imagine.
how do you?
They're huge.
I have no idea.
Where did they descend from? Like, what was before and after? What was the evolution of the ostrich?
Dinosaurs.
Straight dinosaur, like
I think-
T-Rex to
yeah.
a fucking ostrich. There was nothing
They
between.
they
there?
definitely
know.
look like. At least their crazy talons, man, look like straight
Damn.
talons. Like
Yeah.
a crazy, like roosters have the crazy
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
Can you imagine if we had those?
Dude,
You guys don't have one?
Wish.
Do you have one?
Oh!
I
I don't have one. I don't have one.
don't even know where I was going with all that. Oh yes.
Oh, where you grew up? Your roots.
So that was kind of what it was. Like my dad was psyched on that for a while. Ostrich industry blew up. We always had horses and cows and sheep and goats and things like that. But all that to say that like it was definitely a very conservative traditional upbringing, which in hindsight I'm more appreciative of. But at the time you're like, dang, I just want to get out of here. Like
For sure.
you just feel kind of small town,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I get that.
stuck. But I think one thing that really helped, or one thing that really did for me is I felt like it kind of lit a fire in me to go see the world and kind of go do my thing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you grow up in an area that has access, whether to like network or crazy locations, that you take it for granted. But when you don't grow up around that, it's so precious and special. When you have to work so hard to go to the mountains to go snowboarding or
Yeah.
go to the ocean to surf
Yeah.
Straight
or
up.
go do these things, it's like so much more
For sure.
like special, right?
Yeah.
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 And I think that's one thing that I look back on and I'm grateful for, because now I feel like I just haven't lost that fire, and if anything it's like it's just
Growing.
growing, right? And I'm
That's
just
huge.
more psyched than ever
Yeah.
to do those things. And again, to like go back to your questions, like I just want to work towards towards sustainability and be able to like climb till the day I die and surf till the day I die, and still like be able to support all these hobbies and
Yeah.
and that type of thing.
Do you have any outrageous like climbing goals or anything that is crazy that not many people do?
I mean, by crazy, it depends who you compare that to. Like some
Yeah.
people, that's like to climbers, things might be normal. Like for example, I have goals I want to climb K2 in the next 5 years, which is
Yeah.
Yeah.
a mountain in the Himalayas.
classic.
Nice.
Yeah, and
The whole brand named after it.
Yeah, and, it was like snowboards, right? Is that what it was?
K2
I
skates.
had one. I honestly
Rollerblades.
had one of
They're
those.
rollerblades of that.
I'm pretty sure
Oh,
it was
yeah,
snowboard.
they
K2
were. I had
rollerblades.
those.
really?
Yeah.
swipe up the link. Sponsored by K2.
What were your teen years like?
Oh God.
Teen
What were your preteens like? Like 10, 11?
But yeah, teenage years, man, were just like, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of like most kids. You're kind of just trying to figure out what you want to do, like who you are. I feel like that was defining. Was my dad and my parents lived in Belize for a while, and my dad had all these photos of like his years that they lived in the jungle and stuff.
Jeez.
And it was just like hundreds and hundreds of slide photos that we'd like friends would come over
awesome.
and we'd have like slide night, right? You'd project it all onto the wall and you'd go through all these photos, like my dad like killing these gnarly snakes and like cruising through the gnarly
What was he
rivers
doing
with
down
his
there?
dugouts. So they were actually missionaries there, but basically what they were doing was like helping these people that didn't have any access to electricity or power or anything, kind of help them become more like, mostly it was like medical, I guess, if I think about it. The stuff that they were doing was like bringing medical aid to people that would otherwise just like die of malaria or whatever.
Damn.
Well, speaking of Central America, I mean, you passed through it on your journey from Alaska down to Patagonia, correct?
Correct.
Which you did on a motorcycle with your brother?
No, with my two friends. The one guy I think is my third cousin. I don't even know actually.
What?
I did this moto trip from the top of Alaska to the bottom of South America that you would kind of refer to as the Pan American Road or Highway. We just kind of called it the Pan American Trail. And essentially what it is the longest continuous road system in the world. It's about 30,000 miles. Till it was all said and done, we did almost 40,000. But with the exception of the Darien Gap, which is basically like an undeveloped, unpaved section between Panama and Colombia, a lot of people think there's like, I didn't realize this, but a lot of people think the Panama Canal is what separates Colombia from Panama, but it's not. It's actually just jungle. And it's occupied by gnarly like FARC rebels, like crazy guerrillas that'll just cut your head off and kill you. So it's pretty much just impossible to do that. Some people have, but for the most part, the Pan American is the longest continuous road system, and it started as an idea with my one friend Alan, who's like, man, the day I graduate college, I'm gonna hop on a bike and I'm gonna do the Pan Am, and he invited me and our other friend Jeremy, who's also his cousin. And that was kind of something we talked about, as like kids or as teenagers, like, yeah, I'm gonna do this when I, you know what I mean, like when I get out of school or when I have money, whatever. And I feel like we all talk about that stuff, but we're like, man, like, are we gonna talk about this or are we gonna do it, right? Yeah. So one day I got a call from Alan, and I was living out on the West Coast already in my van, and he's like, yo, James, I'm gonna do the Pan Am when I graduate from school in May of 2017. Are you in or you're out? And I'm like, I'm doing it without you, is what he said. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm in. So we kind of just started working, saving up money. We left in the spring of 2017 in May, drove up to Alaska, climbed Mount Denali, and
just to warm up.
Just for a warm up.
Yeah.
Did you buy bikes ahead of time, or did you get bikes in Alaska?
Yeah, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. So kind of, we decided to do the whole trip on Suzuki DR650s, which is, in my opinion, probably the best bike you can do that on. And when it comes to things like this, like, a lot of people think you need like the best kit or the gnarliest bike or like, you know what I mean? Like, you just need to be kitted. But we bought all our bikes on Craigslist for no more than $1,500. My friend Jeremy bought his bike for like $1,000 and like a .45 handgun. Just traded it. You know what I mean? Like, just we're just scrapping. We're like, we don't need the gnarliest gear or equipment or even experience, because none of us had done anything like that. So we searched for these bikes on Craigslist, kind of like all over the country, finally found them, and basically our whole deal was like, we want to just do this on a shoestring budget, not because, well, mostly because that's all we had.
Yeah, there you go.
But also to prove a point. Like, I mean, I feel like we all see, these gnarly like sponsored trips where everything's like all kitted out.
Yeah,
and,
it's
like,
like way too much.
yeah, it's like one thing that has always been really inspiring for me was Yvonne Chenard's and Doug Thompson's crazy Patagonia trip. I mean, for a lot of people. like cruising down to, I mean, that's how Patagonia as the brand and the North Face started.
Yeah.
Was them doing this trip, hopping in a scrappy van and just hitting the road and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, they were super underqualified and didn't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's, no one really does that stuff.
Yeah,
as
you learn
much
on the
anymore.
way. You don't try and buffer it with.
For sure. So that was kind of like our process going into it. It's like, let's get these ghetto bikes and let's do it. And initially it was just going to be a moto trip, like ride from Alaska to Patagonia. And Alan, the guy, my friend who kind of had this idea initially, was like, this is the hardest thing I can think of. Like, this is what I want to do, like the day I graduate college. And when I got brought onto the crew, I'm like, well, if we're going to be passing through all these crazy mountain ranges, why don't we just climb? Like, we'll never have this opportunity the rest of our lives to be passing through these world-class climbing, objectives and mountain ranges. So we kind of just committed to that. We're like, let's climb. So we packed all our climbing stuff onto our bikes. We made these custom panniers, and we started with Mount Denali in Alaska. So half the trip was like this kind of mountaineering expedition type thing, and then the other half was like this riding thing. And equally, I feel like both were equally as gnarly. Like, I got frostbite riding plenty of times in Alaska, just so gnarly.
No gloves, or did you just go through the gloves?
Yeah, gloves, but man, when you're riding it in, below freezing temperatures at 60 miles an hour, the wind chill is actually really crazy, right?
But this is in May, right?
Yeah, but it's pretty gnarly in the Arctic. Well, I guess we didn't go to the Arctic in May, but in Alaska, I mean, it's just brutal.
It's cold.
It's just cold.
Yeah.
But back to the Pan American Trail, was that the first time that you rode a bike and started climbing? Because I didn't hear any biking before that.
Right. I mean, to be honest, none of us had done like a trip over a week long at that point, so it was definitely like a maiden voyage, and we're like, geez, can we even do this? I mean, and it is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, and hopefully will do. I mean, it's the most I want to suffer in this lifetime, I think. But we hadn't done anything like that. We hadn't climbed anything quite that gnarly, and we'd all climbed stuff. We'd been psyched on climbing. I'd been slowly moving more into mountaineering, but as like if anybody that's listening climbs, it's like such a hurdle to get all the right equipment. Obviously, it's kind of dangerous in the mountains, so you don't want to just like go
for it.
Yeah, you kind of need to know what you're doing. And a friend of mine, Sterling Taylor, had climbed Denali the previous season, and I hit him up. I was like, hey, Sterling, do you want to help get us up to Denali, like act as our unofficial guide? And he's like, hell yeah, I'm psyched. So I definitely credit him as to, helping me and us kind of, learn the ropes and
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And kind of know what we were doing. But I think like we learned so much on that trip about like kind of mentally, physically, like what we're capable of. Like, I think I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can't wait until you're fully experienced or dialed in something to go for it. You kind of just need to take the leap of faith, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much what that trip was for us. It was like, geez, like I don't even know if we can do this. Like, if we are qualified or have the experience, or we didn't know what we were doing, but we went for it anyway, and thankfully came out on the other end in one piece.
Did you have any near-death experiences on that route?
The first week, actually probably I think it was the fourth day of the trip, we were riding up to Alaska because we had to hit Denali. We had like these flights booked for base camp. So the way Denali works is like you schedule this ranger meeting, you schedule your flights to base camp. Like everything's pretty, like there's a lot of people that want to climb it, so it's pretty critical to hit that.
Okay.
And we were just riding like 500 miles a day through rain, through snow. It was so gnarly.
500
And
a day is crazy.
Yeah, it sounds insane.
it was miserable.
Man, hard. That sounds hard.
And on the way to Alaska, on the Alaskan highway, there's this gnarly grizzly bear that crossed the road, like big old male grizzly bear, biggest one I've ever seen. And we're all like, holy shit, let's like, we turned around and tried to see it. I was trying to take a photo of it, and my two friends, Jeremy and Alan, were on the side, like on the shoulder, like kind of in front of it, trying to look at it, and I was in the middle, like on the double yellow, trying to shoot a photo of them. And all of a sudden, a semi passed me at like 70 miles an hour. and there's no shoulder on the Alaskan Highway, at least in that section. It just drops off.
Oh my god.
Dude.
It's like a piece of metal or something.
There's no shoulder, it just drops off, so he couldn't swerve around.
Okay.
And the wind of him passing almost blew me over. And it's one of those things that, like, when you have a near-death experience, like, it happens so fast you don't really think about it, right? Because you didn't see it coming. It's there and it's gone. I'm like, oh, that was close.
Yeah.
And that was like the first close call. So we had plenty of close calls on the bikes. I mean, riding through Latin America is insane. I feel like you just have moments where you're like, wow, that could have been it.
In what way? Like, talking about just traffic? Or?
People pulling in front of you, like you kind of whipping over in like a car.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Latin America is just insane. Like I feel like you can sit at an intersection and watch people crash and die. It's just no one adheres to traffic laws. It's just crazy.
Okay.
And I mean, when you're on a bike pretty much every day for a year and a half, there's just a lot that can happen.
I do want to bring it back to what you were saying about your father and the slideshows that you were putting on the wall, because I remember you saying that every single photo that went up had a story to tell, and I feel like every time that you're sharing a photo or I see a photo of yours or you're on a trip, they all have a story to tell. And I think it would be cool if you shared your like 3 most favorite photos that have stories to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think for any photographer, that's kind of hard to be like, these are my 3 favorite, this is my favorite. But
Yeah.
I definitely have a few photos in mind that that are special to me and like kind of stick in my memory. So cue the photo.
Look at that, man. Wow.
Look at that one.
Wow.
4K.
I can do it. I feel like I'm there.
Now this one right here was actually on the Pan Am trip, and it was from like a ride to Dead Horse, Alaska, which is actually like the tip. It's as far north as you can drive in the Western Hemisphere. And it's called a town called Dead Horse. It's way up in the Arctic. It's really gnarly.
That's depressing.
It's really depressing.
Yeah.
One thing they say about it is all that far and still no bar, because it's like a
Say that
oil. All that far and still no bar. There's no alcohol allowed in this whole zone,
Oh wow.
which is a bummer.
Yeah, it's a huge bummer.
Because it's like
not for
oil
us.
zone, right? Like everyone there, it's just an oil field like town, I guess. Like
Yeah.
if you can even call it a town. But if there was to be like alcohol or whatever, like everyone out there there would be gnarly like oil spill mistakes and stuff
Wow.
like that.
So
you
they
know what I
keep it
mean?
shit
So
real tight.
they do like periodic raids and just like
Whoa.
throw people in the slammer for having like a 5th of whiskey or something like that. It's
Wow.
gnarly, right?
Damn.
Anyway, so this photo is from that ride on the Pan Am up to Dead Horse and back. Basically, I'm trying to get the facts straight here, but I got like super frost nipped on that ride. Like I don't even know how to describe what it's like to ride for days in like below freezing temperatures with rain, with like the fatigue, the physical and mental fatigue is so gnarly. And then for any of you that have like been that cold, like it takes about 30 minutes for your hands to stop stinging. And that just makes photos so hard. And that's like one reason this photo is so special to me, is because like it took 30 minutes for my hands to thaw out to where I could click the shutter. Like no lie, right?
No,
And to even
That's
like
so
take
cool.
my camera out of my pannier is like,
Yeah.
it didn't just happen. Like we're there just like in so much pain waiting to like use our
You
extremities.
had to work for it.
Jeez.
Yeah, and so the photo, which you can see here, is when my buddy's, the chain on my buddy's bike broke, and we're in the middle of the Arctic. There's a storm coming, and if we didn't get over this mountain pass in time, we would have been stuck there for God knows how long. So there's like all this stress of like, man, can we even get over the pass? Like, how do we get out of here? Like, we don't have the right parts to fix it, type of thing. So there's just all these different things going on, and it's just like kind of brings back crazy memories to me. And I just remember how hard I worked to take that photo, and like that's something to me that you can't manufacture. Like you can't just go do that on a shoot. That's like
Yeah.
something that is, irreplaceable. It's like,
You're living it.
yeah, for sure.
It was worth the search, some would say.
Worth the grind.
Worth the
Yeah.
grind.
So that's one photo that's really special to me. The second photo that I guess is maybe one of the favorites that are up there is
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Look at
Dang.
that one.
this was a mountain called Alpamayo.
Looks
It was really big. It was really cold. And for a long time, this was kind of like my personal climbing like goal. I'm like, if I climb any mountain, this is the one I want to do. This was in the Andes Mountains in Peru. It took about 5 days to get back here. We hired like a like burro. I guess like a guy who owned some donkeys or burros. So we took all our shit back there. Took 5 days. My friend Alan got super sick, like puked and shitted his brains out for a day.
Wow.
Alan.
Alan
Oh my god.
got sick from altitude.
Okay.
So we finally get up to high camp, and all that to say that it's just like every day when you're like really working. I mean, it's so far. I don't even know how to explain how like far it is to get just to like see the mountain, right? So we finally get to high camp, and we're all psyched. Like I feel like that's the hard part is hauling all your gear on your back and obviously on the burro as well to get there. Like that's the grind. The fun part is climbing, right? Like that's what we're there for. And this was a mountain, like as you can see, it was crazy, just aesthetically beautiful. So we wake up in the morning and there's a fresh avalanche down the route that we're gonna climb. And we kind of like stand there, like we wake up early before the sunrise, but we could see the avalanche, and we're like, maybe we should wait another day, because a week or two before, 5 people had died on that same route, same avalanche. Like pretty much there's just like the route is kind of like a funnel for like serac fall and ice fall and avalanche debris. So we're like, let's give it another day.
Damn.
We wait another day, and for the next morning, and the storm hits. So it's this 3-day storm that kind of like full whiteout, and there's pockets that it would clear, and we could see the mountain. And like every morning we'd wake up and like there would actually be like the storm would subside for a little bit, but there would be another fresh avalanche for 3 days, and it was like such a disappointing and frustrating thing, because at that point you've done so much work to get there, so you're like, man, should we roll a dice and just climb it? Like, what are the odds that an avalanche breaks when we're climbing? Like, should we just roll the dice and climb it? So that I feel like for a climber and for myself, like the hardest thing is to turn back from something. Like it's way easier mentally to just go do it at that point, because you've done the hard work already.
Yeah.
And I think like having the self-control to turn back from something because the risk and the odds are a little too high is such a gnarly thing to kind of get over. So that's what that mountain represents to me, and it was, I don't know, it's just like crazy thinking back on it, because we were actually trying to climb a mountain across the valley, and because the storm hit, like we couldn't get there, and if the storm hadn't hit, we would have been there at the time that this avalanche hit and like killed a couple climbers. So like thinking about all that stuff, if like things had been different by like by a day or a few hours, like we would have been the people on that mountain. So things like that. Basically that mountain represents, like that backstory and like the self-control it takes to like turn back from something that is like you want it so bad, right? But like it's just the risk is a little too high. But I think
or could have been a life-changing.
Yeah, what could have, and like I think that's kind of what keeps me psyched to keep climbing is like that's the mountains are so powerful and beautiful, and like I just don't have words for them, but they just humble you, and like when you get shut down like that, they're just so much more magnificent in my mind. You know what I mean? It's not like this. It's not like this thing you kind of climb and conquer. It's like this crazy force of nature that you're experiencing, and like sometimes you just are humbled by it, and it's an amazing experience. You know? So that's definitely what that photo represents to me.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a beautiful one.
Last photo. This is actually another climbing story, and this one, as you can see, is a little more intense. This was actually taken seconds after I dug my buddy Jeremy out of an avalanche. So you can see here my like headlamp
Jeremy.
is illuminating him, and I like took a couple photos and then we left. But long story short, this was in Peru as well, in the Andes. We got the same kind of situation. We got stuck at high camp at 18,000 some feet for 3 days. Every day it was snowing. Finally, the storm let up and we were out of food, and we're like, all right, we can either leave right now or we can take a stab at the summit, because it was like we woke up at 2 a.m. The sky was clear, and we decided to roll the dice and gamble. And I think with climbing, like, things are rarely ever perfect. Like, yeah, you know, it would be more ideal to give the snow a few days to sit, you know, like fresh snow. But like we had been waiting for 3 weeks for that 3-day weather window, so it's like, you know what I mean? Sometimes
Yeah.
you kind of take these
It's
risks.
good enough.
Yeah. So we decided to go for it. We pushed for the summit. We're at about 19,000 feet, and I'm climbing behind my friend Jeremy. We're connected with a rope, and I just hear this like really like soft whoosh. It just sounds like whoosh, and I look up, and my headlamp just illuminates like a river of snow
Oh my
falling
God.
down, and my friend he just disappeared.
That's everyone's worst fear right there.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
And I don't know how to explain it, but like it literally felt like a bad dream, because like in a dream, you know, when you're getting chased, you're like trying to run, but you can't, and you move in slow
Yeah.
motion.
It
It was
felt
like
like
the
that?
same thing.
Oh, really?
Because
Were you under any snow at that point?
I wasn't under any snow because we were separated by this crevasse, and if you don't know what a crevasse is, it's like this really gnarly crack in the glacier. Because essentially a glacier is like a river of ice that's moving and flowing downhill, and when it bends and turns, it cracks and like opens these big things called crevasses. So the avalanche drained into this crevasse right ahead of me, like 30 feet, and that's the only reason it didn't bury me as well. But right away I was like, you know, he's probably dead. He probably got drained into the crevasse. Like, there's so much. Like, I've never had my life flash before my eyes, but I've heard people talk about it. But it was like a similar thing where like
Wow.
so many things were going through my mind. I'm like, I need to do this. If he's dead, I need to like go back to town, get help, come back, like find his body. Like all this stuff is
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
in a second. I don't even know how to
No,
explain
But
it.
you were attached to him with a rope.
I was attached to
Yeah.
by a rope, right?
Oh my God.
So I try to, you know, I start counting because I knew he had a few minutes to live, and I tried to move fast, but like I said, a bad dream. Like at 19,000 feet, you can only take like a step every 3 breaths or something. So I'm trying to run, but I can only like step, take 3 breaths, step, take 3
Wow.
breaths, because you're so fatigued and there's no oxygen. So I finally like pull the rope tight, and I start digging, and I find him about 5 or 6 feet down. Fortunately, found his head, which if like when he got caught in the slide, he was kind of tumbling around, and it was honestly a bit of a miracle, because if he had landed any differently, like say I'd found his like leg, I would have never got
Yeah,
to
because
him
he
in
would have been
time.
buried in and he can't breathe the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah, so I found his head, and immediately I just like all that was uncovered was his head or his face, and I couldn't do chest compressions or anything because he wasn't breathing when I found him. He was like purple and white and stuff.
Wow.
So I just started doing mouth to mouth. Never kissed a man.
That's
but
all right. You can make it with your helmet. It's fine. Yeah.
Did mouth to mouth. I just started punching him as hard as I could, screaming at him for
Wow.
Wow, that's
I don't
aggressive.
know how long. Like it's hard to like keep track of time and something like that. It could have been 5 minutes, could have been 10 minutes. I have no idea. But I almost gave up because he wasn't coming to, and finally like I just like kept giving mouth to mouth and like punching him as hard as I could, and he started breathing all faintly.
Whoa.
Wow.
And I kept giving mouth to mouth, and then he kind of woke up and like spit out all the snow and like
Oh.
came to, right?
Yeah.
And it took another probably 20-25 minutes to dig him out to where like when you're under snow, even if it's 4 feet deep, it's
It's
cement.
dense.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't do anything. So dug him out, we got out of there, but this photo was from the moment that he finally climbed out of the hole.
Wow.
So that was definitely an intense moment, and to me, I mean, it just like brings back so many memories, and I'm just grateful that he's alive, was able to save his life, that I'm alive.
That's
And
crazy.
it's
insane.
it's a special photo. So it might
Yeah.
not be like these photos might not be like these bangers, right? But
Yeah.
for me, like what's really special about images and stories is the what's behind them, right?
Yeah,
Like
for
the
sure.
stories behind them. That's what makes something valuable.
Yeah.
So from
and-
his recollection, when he got hit by the snow, was he alive and trying to dig out? Because I've heard, and I think I heard this when I was a kid, that you spit when you're under snow, and that's how you know which way is up. Because
Well,
your spit will go down with the gravity. So you know if I'm upside down, I have to dig the opposite way.
he's probably passed out.
So I
by
wonder
that
if he
point.
got hit by the
Yeah.
snow and absolutely passed out, or if he tried to dig and it was just too dense.
No, he definitely, like, I don't know if he knew that. I didn't even know that, actually. But you're kind of disoriented because he had gotten spun around.
Yeah.
But basically, in his recollection, he started, he felt the slide break. He's buried under snow. He's trying to swim to the top. It settled because it happened really fast. He probably slid, 50 feet, only 50 feet, but he was buried pretty deep. And he said he dug like a little cavity for, air
Wow.
and just fell asleep. He's like, this is the end of my life.
Yeah.
And fell asleep. So it was pretty
Wow.
like, I had the gnarlier
Wow.
experience because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, save your
my
home.
friend's dying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He just fell asleep. He like got
Wow, how
got
peaceful
like
is that?
like dozed off, right?
Wow.
It's actually pretty
That
peaceful.
sounds
to die in
peaceful.
avalanche.
Yeah, good for him. He was
Crazy.
like,
Yeah.
you know what? Let me just get 10 more seconds and think about my life. for a
Yeah,
minute."
right.
That is
But
really crazy.
but then he woke up to me giving him mouth to mouth.
Oh, I'm back!
Yeah, but so he definitely had the
That's
mellower experience out of the two of us.
That's
Wow.
really crazy.
But that's the story behind that photo. And there's a million other photos that I have that are special, but those are three that I think have like a unique story behind them, and are kind of stick, fresh in my memory.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had a crazy young life, and it is definitely inspiring. And we've seen you in moments like that, as we've been talking about with these trips and everything. But we're curious. I'm sure everyone listening is curious. Do you have any trips planned, or do you have any crazy photo trips, or anything coming down the pipeline that you'd care to share?
Yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I say all my plans were canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
Great point.
I had a few expeditions planned this year. Norway, Alaska, Mount Denali, Canada. I had some climbs planned.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, a sailing surf trip through Indonesia.
A lot of international.
Yeah, man. So I think I'll kind of just wait to see what happens next year. We're all kind of just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But as far as like trips go, that's kind of, I'm just waiting to see if things will open up, if borders will open up. But in my personal career, there's a lot of projects I've been doing, on the commercial, like professional end of things, which I've been fortunate enough to have plenty of work through all of this, which is awesome. But I'm kind of low-key working on a book from the Pan Am trip. So
yeah.
that's kind of a slow-moving train, but
Yeah.
I'm grinding away at it.
That's
so
awesome.
I hope to kind of have like a mix between like a actual book and like a coffee table, like photo-heavy and copy-heavy. So that's what I'm working on during all of this, and we'll see what the future holds. I'm psyched to keep getting after it. Psyched to keep surfing, keep climbing, and kind of, push the ceiling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the future looks like, and hopefully COVID goes away, we can finally do stuff again.
Yeah, straight up.
Cheers to that.
Well, hell yeah.
Cheers to
Appreciate you
that.
coming
Cheers to
out.
that.
We always love hanging out with you, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Always a
boys.
pleasure,
yeah,
man.
we'll keep doing this stuff. So.
Thanks, James.